progress in allogenic transplantation was made through animal experiments between 1950 and the late 60s. And there are several names we need to remember and recollect every time we do a transplant. You know, von Beckham was the first one who showed that bone marrow cannot be given orally, it has to be given through intravenous route in a mice experiment, not intraperitoneally, but intravenously. A very common route of infusion in mice is intraperitoneal. So that was shown in 1956 in mice. And in 1957, almost the same time as Billingham and Brent first demonstrated that, okay, the mice who were transplanted in few weeks' time would develop what was called a runt disease or wasting syndrome, where they would lose weight, would not eat, and subsequently die within a few weeks, which we now know as graft versus host disease in humans, was shown for the first time. And Uphoff showed that, you know, by simply giving low dose of methotrexate, that can be prevented. And in the late 50s, it was the first time that the concept of human leukocyte antigen was introduced. It was through examination of serum of pregnant women that it was first realized that there are antigens in leukocytes which were other than the ABO blood group, and our body reacts against those. So Donald Thomas, who actually got the Nobel Prize in 1990 for his work in clinical transplantation. And mind you, what many people don't know, that Medawar won a Nobel Prize in 1960 for his work in transplantation tolerance. And those who are interested can read it up because it's a fascinating read on transplantation tolerance, which happened in the 1950s. But what Donald Thomas did was, see, mice transplantation is an inbred transplantation, which means that the genetic variation amongst mice is very limited unless you genetically manipulate them to be different. So what Donald Thomas did was chose canine model, which is an outbred model, means there is a lot of genetic difference between the litter mates. One dog at a time gives rise to 10, 12 puppies. So what they did at that time was transplant marrow from one dog to the other of the litter mate. And they kept a diary or a chart that, okay, this is dog number 1, who I'm giving marrow for, dog number 3, 4, 5. And then there is dog number 2 who's being infused from 6, 7, and 9, and so on and so forth. And what they realized is some is getting engrafted and some are not. They also established at the same time that, you know, you need a certain degree of radiation, because what they used at that time was a single dose of radiation. Whether it's 3 gray, whether it's 4 gray, whether it's 5 gray, how much dose do you need? So what they established was something in the range of 8 to 9 grays, what you need for to irradiate a dog with, to eradicate the marrow, which we now call myeloablation, and infuse the marrow. Now, certain marrows engrafted and certain didn't. So they gradually understood that there is something called a dog leukocyte antigen. And those who received grafts from dog leukocyte antigen matched litters, or the puppies, engrafted. And those who did not, they did not engraft. And what they also found was that just having a match was not enough. So it was largely the work of Rainer Staub, who was again a student of Donald Thomas, who used a control group where nothing was done other than giving a DLA matched marrow versus giving methotrexate along with DLA matched marrow. And what they found was that those who received methotrexate survived a longer time, a much longer time. And that was the first concept, mind you, of graft versus host disease prophylaxis. It's all happening in canine models over a period of 15 years, which first led to the modern era of human marrow transplantation. the first successful transplantation, allogenic transplantation, where three children between 68 and 69 who were transplanted for primary immunodeficiency from HLA matched siblings, and they were subsequently cured. But first transplantation for leukemia happened in 1969, and between 1969 and 71, 11 such transplants were done by Donald Thomas and his group. They subsequently, these were all end-stage leukemia, mind you. And if you just focus on the lower curve, that quite a few patients engrafted and quite a few patients survived. I mean, in those days, mind you, a 50% survival at 50 days was a huge thing. And quite a few patients survived beyond that. And 35 years later, when Donald Thomas received the Nobel Prize, one of them were alive. So subsequently, when Donald Thomas and group found that this actually works, that you give radiation and cyclophosphamide and give bone marrow from HLA matched donor, actually it works in quite a few patients. They went on to do transplantation in CR1. And early data, which was published in 1974, showed that, a large majority of these patients were alive at 200 days, which was a fascinating phenomenon at that time.